Okay, now we're going to solve sit down. So 6 students, Adam, Betsy, Cameron, David, Eleanor, and Frank, where A, B, C, D, E, and F, are assigned to 6 desks in a row, 1 through 6. Desk 1 is closest to a window with desk 6 farthest away. Each student is assigned to exactly one of the desks and subject to the following constraints. So we have 6 game pieces right here, and we've got our window that we put next to desk 1. Now, to work through our rules, our first rule says Cameron and Eleanor must be assigned to desks that are next to each other. So we know that Cameron and Eleanor are next to each other, but we don't know who's going first and second, so we have to add our little switch on top or with our arrows. Either one will work. Next, we're told that F and E cannot be assigned to consecutive desks. So similarly to what we have above, we have a box with a switch on it, but then we have a not line going through it that F and E cannot be next to each other. Next, we're told that David cannot be assigned to the desks furthest from or closest to the window. So David in 1 and 6 is not allowed. And next, we're told that Adam goes in desk 3. So we'll note that, and we'll also put Adam into desk 3 on our boards, at least on this first board here. And then we're told that Cameron must be assigned to a desk farther from the window than Adam. Well, farther from the window is away from W, which means that we need Cameron to be farther away from spot 1 than Adam is. In other words, we're going to have A and then C sometime after it. Okay, so now we've put our A in spot 3 for all of our game boards, and we've made sure to note that D cannot go first or sixth in that master game board, which we've done in yellow up here. Now, the first thing we need to do is look at our rules and look if we can combine any of our rules. And what we should see is that the A before C also brings in this CE block. So now on our game board, we should realize that we have this C and E block coming after the A. Those pieces can switch around as well. So we've drawn in on our first game board the C and E after the A, but we also don't know if that C and E are going in 4 and 5 or if they're going into the 5 and 6 spot. We just know that they're going sometime after A is seated. Now, moving on to our first question, which of the following is an acceptable ordering of assigning students to desks? We should look for A third with C and E after it consecutively, and that should eliminate 3 of your possible answer choices. Furthermore, when we check for F and E not being consecutive, we see one of the answer choices leaves F and E next to each other, so this cannot be our answer, and that should leave one other possibility, and of course the D is not in the first or last spot. Also, before we add that to our game boards, we should check for floaters and realize that B is our floater in this game. And copying down our acceptable situation answer, we get F, D, A, C, E, and then B. And we can mark on this game board that the C and the E are free to switch around right there in that block and can trade off. Next, we're asked, if Frank is assigned to desk 2, which of the following must be true? And we know that must be true questions ask us about things that are fixed in place. So the first thing that we should do is put F into spot 2 and start to look for inferences. And the first thing we should realize is that the D is no longer allowed in spot 1, so it must be going after A. So because the D and the C and E must be there, we realize that the D can't go in 5 because the C and E have to be consecutive after the A. And the D can't go in 6, and what that leaves is that the B must therefore be going into spot 1. The first answer choice is that Eleanor is closer to the window than David, and we know that if Eleanor is closer to the window, then Eleanor is more this way than David. And if that's true, well then Cameron and Eleanor are in spots 4 and 5, and David would then have to be at the end. Because remember, Cameron and Eleanor have to go after Adam. Next, we're asked, what about Betsy second and Eleanor fourth? Well, if Eleanor's fourth, we know that Cameron is going to be 5th, and that means that David is going to be forced into spots 1 or 6th, and we just can't have that happen, so this option is no good. Third, we're simply asked if Frank and Eleanor can sit next to each other, and we know that can't be true based on this rule right here. And then we're asked if Frank, David, and Eleanor could sit consecutively. To get F, D, and E consecutively, we know that the E is going to go after A. all three of those going after A with the C, we would just run out of room. There's no way to put F, D, E in a row in any capacity after the A. There's just no room. But lastly, we can look at Adam, David, and Eleanor consecutively, and we should realize from our previous game board that right here, as long as we flip the C and the E, we would then have Adam, David, and Eleanor consecutive so long as we switch the C and the E. Next, we're asked, if Cameron sits farthest from the window and David sits in desk 4, how many of the students' assignments to desks are completely determined? So first, we're going to put Cameron farthest from the window in spot 6. The E, or Eleanor, is going to follow into spot 5 because they must be consecutive. And lastly, we're going to put David into spot 4. And once we've done this, all we have left is F and B. And we realize that F and B don't have any rules acting on them, especially B, which is a floater, but then F, we're just told can't be near the E or next to the E, and we're not risking that in any capacity. So F and B are relegated to spots 1 and 2, but we don't know where they're going. They're just going to be able to switch off. And this question asks us, how many students are completely determined? Well, A, D, E, and C are completely determined, but the F and the B can switch off, so they're not. That gives us a total of 4 completely determined game pieces. And lastly, we're asked, which of the following, if true, completely determines the assignments of students to desks? Well, first we're told David in 4. Well, we can look at this game board right here and realize that David in 4 didn't actually completely determine our game board. The E and C were allowed to switch off in this game world. And Betsy First, similarly in this exact same game board, we see Betsy First does not completely determine the board. E and C can trade off. If we put C in 5, this is the incorrect game board. Well, then we know that E is going to go somewhere before or after it, but it's not completely determined. And we're pretty much stuck, right? This is not where we want to be for a completely determined game board. We should be moving pieces into place right after we get the answer choice that we like. And we saw that with C in 4. It pushed the E right next to it into 5, and that told us that D couldn't go in 1 and 6, so D has to go in 2. Then F can't go next to E, so F goes in 1, and B finally is pushed at the end. That is what a good, completely determined game board should feel like. We do the first move from the answer choice, and everything else should fall into place. And that is how we solve sit down.